Baltimore, located in the state of Maryland, USA, is a historic port city with deep cultural, social, and economic roots, but it is also known for its persistent struggles with violent crime. As of recent statistics, the city has one of the highest murder rates in the United States, recorded at approximately 58.5 homicides per 100,000 inhabitants. This rate places Baltimore among the most violent cities not just in the U.S., but in the developed world. Founded in 1729, Baltimore has played a significant role in American history, particularly as a crucial seaport and manufacturing hub. It is perhaps best known as the birthplace of the U.S. national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, written by Francis Scott Key during the War of 1812. The city's identity has long been tied to its working-class roots and strong African-American heritage. However, as industrial jobs declined in the latter half of the 20th century, so too did economic stability in many neighborhoods, leading to cycles of poverty, unemployment, and social disinvestment. Baltimore's population, which once peaked at nearly 1 million in the mid-20th century, has steadily declined to just under 600,000 due in part to suburbanization, deindustrialization, and ongoing crime issues. This demographic shift has left numerous neighborhoods in economic distress, and with that distress, violence has become a persistent issue. The murder rate of 58.5 per 100,000 is more than 10 times the national average, with much of the violence concentrated in specific low-income areas. Many factors contribute to Baltimore's high murder rate. These include a long history of racial segregation, systemic inequality, inadequate access to quality education, and under-resourced public health and mental health services. The city also faces challenges with drug trafficking, particularly heroin and, more recently, fentanyl, which fuels violence among gangs and other criminal networks. Despite large investments in law enforcement and public safety initiatives, including surveillance technologies and community policing strategies, reductions in homicide rates have been inconsistent and difficult to sustain. Baltimore's police department has faced repeated controversies, most notably the 2015 death of Freddie Gray while in police custody, which sparked protests, national outrage, and calls for police reform. That event also led to a federal investigation and a consent decree aimed at reforming the city's policing practices. However, mistrust between communities and law enforcement remains a significant barrier to crime reduction. Efforts to combat the murder rate in Baltimore include a range of approaches beyond policing. Community-based violence interruption programs such as Safe Streets Baltimore have shown promise in reducing retaliation shootings and improving neighborhood safety through conflict mediation. There are also various grassroots organizations, clergy groups, and local leaders who continue to work tirelessly to bring attention to the underlying causes of violence and promote healing and investment in vulnerable communities. Despite its challenges, Baltimore is also a city of resilience, creativity, and cultural vibrancy. It is home to world-class institutions like Johns Hopkins University and Hospital, a dynamic art scene, and a deep-rooted musical tradition, particularly in jazz and hip-hop. The Inner Harbor remains a tourist and economic center, while neighborhoods like Fells Point, Hamden, and Mount Vernon showcase the city's unique architecture and eclectic charm. The high murder rate remains a stark reminder of the urgent work needed to address inequality, rebuild trust in institutions, and ensure safety for all residents. Baltimore stands at a crossroads, facing ongoing struggles but also holding immense potential for renewal and transformation. In recent years, Baltimore's leadership and community stakeholders have increasingly acknowledged that a multifaceted, public health-oriented approach is essential to curbing the city's murder rate. The administration of Mayor Brandon Scott, elected in 2020, has emphasized a holistic plan called the Group Violence Reduction Strategy, which focuses on identifying individuals most at risk of either committing or falling victim to gun violence. The strategy offers support services, employment opportunities, and mentorship to help redirect lives away from crime. While the results are still being evaluated, early signs suggest a modest decline in homicides in areas where the initiative has been fully implemented. Public education reform is also seen as a critical component in addressing the city's long-term crime issues. The Baltimore City public school system has struggled with funding disparities, aging infrastructure, and achievement gaps, particularly in predominantly black and low-income neighborhoods. Investment in early childhood education, after-school programs, and mental health resources is being championed by educators and advocates as essential tools to provide youth with alternatives to the street economy. Housing policy and urban renewal projects are another front in the fight against violent crime. Baltimore has long struggled with abandoned and dilapidated housing, estimated at more than 15,000 vacant properties. These spaces often become hubs for illicit activity. Programs like Project COIE, Creating Opportunity for Renewal and Enterprise, have aimed to demolish or rehabilitate these structures, with mixed success. Community developers and nonprofits are working to convert these spaces into affordable housing, green spaces, or community centers to improve neighborhood stability and quality of life. Substance abuse treatment and harm reduction efforts have also become a focal point of public health policy. Baltimore has taken progressive steps by supporting needle exchange programs, increasing access to naloxone, a drug that reverses opioid overdoses, and advocating for safe consumption sites. Recognizing the role addiction plays in perpetuating crime and destabilizing families, these programs aim to treat drug use as a health issue rather than strictly a criminal one. Cultural identity and pride remain strong forces within Baltimore, providing hope and unity even in difficult times. The city's deep artistic heritage continues to thrive through mural projects, music festivals, spoken word poetry, and community art spaces. Local artists often use their platforms to address social justice, violence, and inequality, helping to inspire younger generations and foster healing through creativity. Sports have also been a unifying force for the city. The Baltimore Ravens NFL and Orioles MLB bring pride and a sense of community, while youth leagues and recreation centers provide essential outlets for children and teenagers. However, the closing of many recreation centers in past decades due to budget cuts is often cited as a contributing factor to rising youth crime. Recent efforts to reopen or build new centers reflect a renewed understanding of the importance of structured, safe spaces for young people. Despite the dark cloud of its murder rate, Baltimore continues to fight for change. It is a city full of contradictions, rich in culture yet plagued by poverty, historically significant yet deeply scarred by inequality. But within those contradictions lies a fierce sense of identity and determination. Residents often refer to Baltimore as Charm City, not just for its tourist appeal, but for the grit, heart, and soul of the people who call it home. Environmental justice is another important piece of the puzzle. Baltimore has struggled with issues such as lead poisoning, air pollution, and limited access to clean green spaces, all of which disproportionately affect low-income communities and contribute to poor health outcomes and developmental challenges among children. Local efforts to clean up the Chesapeake Bay watershed, plant urban gardens, and improve air quality intersect with broader goals of neighborhood renewal and public wellness. At the core of all these efforts lies the undeniable truth that real change in Baltimore will require long-term commitment, not just from policymakers and institutions, but from society at large. The city's challenges cannot be resolved by short election cycles, one-time grants, or superficial reform. What's needed is sustained, intergenerational investment in the people who live there. It means listening to community voices, empowering youth, dismantling structural racism, and rebuilding systems that have historically failed the most vulnerable. Faith communities continue to be a powerful force in this movement. Churches, mosques, and synagogues throughout Baltimore provide more than spiritual guidance. They are safe havens, resource hubs, and places of advocacy. Clergy have often been on the front lines during crises, mediating conflicts, organizing food drives, and demanding justice after police shootings or neighborhood tragedies. Their leadership remains vital in cultivating both compassion and accountability. Nationally, Baltimore's struggles have too often been reduced to a statistic or stereotype. But those who live in the city know that its story is far more complex and far more human. It's a city of poets and protesters, scholars and survivors, builders and dreamers. It's a place where past trauma and current hardship live side by side with powerful love for community, identity, and progress. The fight to lower Baltimore's murder rate is not just a fight against violence. It's a fight for dignity, opportunity, and hope. Every life saved, every block restored, and every child given a chance at a better future is a step toward reclaiming a city that has given so much to the fabric of American history and culture. Baltimore's journey is far from over. The road ahead is long and filled with challenges, but it is also filled with the potential for healing, transformation, and justice. And in that, there is a powerful reason to believe that Baltimore can and will rise. Looking ahead, the path to significantly lowering the murder rate in Baltimore will require sustained investment in education, housing, public health, and economic opportunity, far beyond temporary crackdowns or police surges. It will take consistent political will, empower communities, and a commitment to addressing root causes rather than just symptoms. For many Baltimoreans, the fight to make their city safer is not just a policy debate. It's a matter of survival, dignity, and the hope for a better future. The hope for a better future in Baltimore is alive in the tireless work of activists, educators, parents, and young leaders who refuse to give up on their neighborhoods. Community gardens have sprouted where abandoned lots once stood. Mentorship programs like THREAD and Baltimore Ceasefire Initiatives have gained national attention for their grassroots approach to ending violence through human connection, peace-building events, and direct outreach. These programs operate on the belief that building stronger relationships between people, especially in the most underserved areas, can begin to break the cycles of trauma and retaliation that fuel the city's homicide rate. Trauma, in fact, is a central and often under-acknowledged piece of the puzzle. Many residents live with chronic exposure to violence, loss, and instability, often beginning in early childhood. This sustained stress can affect brain development, emotional regulation, and decision-making, which in turn increases the likelihood of involvement in criminal activity or victimization. Recognizing this, some schools and nonprofit organizations have begun to implement trauma-informed practices, ensuring that counselors, teachers, and youth workers are trained to identify and support young people who are navigating these difficult realities. The role of healthcare institutions, especially the presence of world-renowned Johns Hopkins Hospital, also plays a unique part in Baltimore's ongoing narrative. While it stands as a symbol of medical innovation and excellence, its relationship with surrounding East Baltimore communities has been fraught with tension over displacement, gentrification, and access to care. In recent years, there have been stronger efforts to bridge these divides through community engagement, workforce development programs, and partnerships that bring medical resources directly into neighborhoods in need. On the policy level, debates continue over how best to balance law enforcement with social support systems. Some city officials and reform advocates argue for reallocating part of the police budget to fund mental health crisis teams, housing aid, and job training, interventions proven to reduce violence without relying on incarceration. However, others argue that an underfunded police department in a high-crime city cannot afford to lose resources. This tension is reflective of a broader national conversation, but is felt intensely in Baltimore, where trust in police remains fragile and the urgency for solutions is immediate. Meanwhile, the criminal justice system itself is under scrutiny for contributing to the city's challenges. Over-policing in some communities, long pretrial detentions, and a lack of rehabilitative services in jails have all been points of concern. Reform efforts are slowly underway, with a focus on diversion programs for nonviolent offenders, restorative justice models, and reentry support for those returning from prison. Organizations like the Maryland Office of the Public Defender and local legal aid groups continue to push for more equitable and humane systems. Baltimore's future, while uncertain, holds promise in its rising generation. Young people are stepping into roles of leadership through student organizing, digital activism, entrepreneurship, and the arts. High school and college students are increasingly engaged in conversations about policy, race, justice, and community healing. Programs that support coding, design, business incubation, and trade skills are creating new pathways for careers that didn't exist a generation ago. As the city continues to grapple with its challenges, it is also slowly writing a new chapter, one defined not just by its statistics, but by its stories. Stories of resilience, reinvention, and relentless hope. For every headline about a shooting, there's another about a teacher mentoring dozens of kids after school, a neighbor who feeds those without homes, or a former gang member turned activist saving lives one conversation at a time. Baltimore is a city where pain and promise coexist. Its murder rate remains one of the highest in the country, but it does not define the entirety of its identity. The fight to reduce violence is ongoing and complex, but it's also being led by people who live the reality every day and still choose to believe in change. Baltimore may be burdened by the weight of its past and the challenges of its present, but it is also animated by a vision of a more just, safe, and unified future. That vision of a more just and unified future for Baltimore depends not only on addressing the root causes of violence, but also on fostering inclusive economic growth and ensuring that prosperity is equitably shared across all communities. The city has seen pockets of revitalization, particularly in the downtown and waterfront areas, where new restaurants, startups, tech companies, and residential developments have emerged. But for many longtime residents in West Baltimore, Sandtown, Winchester, Cherry Hill, and other historically marginalized neighborhoods, these improvements often feel distant, disconnected, or even threatening as fears of gentrification and displacement loom. To counteract this imbalance, some developers and city leaders are now pushing for equitable development, a model that prioritizes affordable housing, local hiring, and community ownership. Initiatives like community land trusts and co-op businesses are being explored as ways to keep wealth and decision-making power within neighborhoods that have long been excluded from Baltimore's economic resurgence. There is also a growing emphasis on supporting Black-owned businesses and neighborhood entrepreneurs as key players in the city's recovery. Transportation and mobility have also entered the conversation as critical factors in public safety and opportunity. Many of Baltimore's poorest neighborhoods isolated from major job centers, healthcare providers, and educational institutions, making it harder for residents to escape poverty. Cuts to bus routes and the cancellation of the Red Line, a proposed east-west light rail system, have had a lasting impact on mobility and equity. Restoring and expanding reliable, affordable transit remains a major goal for activists and urban planners who see it as essential for long-term crime prevention and community health.